Good afternoon. How are you doing, Mr. and Mrs. Parker? It's nice to see you both. How are we feeling today? Not so good? Well, hopefully we can turn this not so good into a positive after effect. So let's see what's going on here today. Based on what my assistant out there said, looks like you both have the double standard policy in effect. So let's start with you first, Mrs. Parker. What's going on? Why don't you tell me what's going on here? Okay. Mr. Parker? Mr. Parker, let your wife finish. She's almost done, I'm sure. Keep talking. I see. So the problem right now is basically you told your husband, Mr. Parker here, that he needs to learn how to listen to you, right? Okay, fair enough. Now, Mr. Parker, let me ask you, do you listen to your wife? Okay, you say yes. Well, based on these notes, it looks like... we're going to have to quote you here, Mrs. Parker. Mrs. Parker, you cannot reach for this. Remember, everything you said to my assistant has to be either true or to the best of your ability. But let's get started. My husband, Mr. Parker, he never listens to me. He always nags and complains about stuff I do. But when I turn around and do the same thing he does, he swears up and down that I'm not being supportive of what he says. Okay, that's an understandable jest right there. And now that we done read that, Mr. Parker, what do you think? Are you listening to your wife? Are you honoring and valuing what she wants? You claim you are. Okay. Well, let's get your side of the story. What seems to be the problem? Okay, keep going. Mrs. Parker, you had your moment to talk. Now let him talk. Keep going, sir. Okay. I see. So you do listen to her. She just... Sounds like what you basically just said is she's giving you the silent treatment. You tell her to listen to you, and then when you try to listen to her, now all of a sudden she has nothing to say. Well, it's okay. It happens in some relationships. A lot of times people do that. They give our partners the silent treatment because after a while it's like when you've talked and you've talked and you've talked and you've talked and nothing goes through, it's like, why even talk anymore? So, back to you, Mrs. Parker. Are you giving your husband here the silent treatment? Mrs. Parker, we're not going to deviate from the question. Stay on task with me. Are you giving your husband the silent treatment after you've tried to talk to him? You say you're not. Okay. Well, let's take a look at his notes. Here we go. Mr. Parker said, and I quote, I always listen to my wife, even when she's mad. And every time I try to speak, she speaks out of turn and says I'm not listening to her. Even when I acknowledge what I am doing wrong and have fixed my problems, she turns around and does the exact same thing that she told me not to do. Okay. And this last part is not good here. And she does it to be spiteful or out of revenge. Well, Mrs. Parker, it sounds like you both are, not just one of you, excuse me if I say, it sounds like you both are doing this just to get back at each other. Oh yes, I'm looking at it. Listen to what you just said. In your previous notes, the ones I just read, you basically said you've tried talking to him and everything, right? And then you turn around and give him the silent treatment. And when he acknowledges what you want and does what you say, you turn around and do the exact same thing he does, but then he turns around and does the silent treatment to you, right? Well, see, there you both go. There's your problem right there. You both are performing what is known as the double standard policy when it comes to a relationship or whatever. You don't understand? Well, let me help you understand this. Double standards in relationship, be it relationship, finance, living conditions, wherever the story may be, it's always when somebody says for you to do something, then they turn around and do the exact same thing you did, but then they swear up and down that what they're doing is just fine. And based on y'all's relationship problem right now, that's exactly what you both are doing. You're both doing a double standard policy right now, and then turn around later on and doing the same thing again just to be spiteful of each other or to get even. So, Mrs. Parker, let's start with something simple. What is it that you told your husband something that you want him to stop doing or want him to listen to you about? Ah, yes, of course, when it comes to finances. Okay, what's going on in the finance department? You say he's overspending. Okay, well, what is he overspending on? Mr. Parker, let her say it. What is your husband overspending money on? Okay, he's overspending on just anything, huh? So you don't know specifically what he's overspending on, you just know he's overspending. Okay, fair enough. Now, Mr. Parker, what is it that you are overspending on? Okay, paper towels, toilet tissue, the occasional food from time to time. Okay, so basically stuff that you need for the household, you buy it. And what about her? What is she overspending on? Mrs. Parker, let him say it. Let him finish. Mr. Parker, go ahead. What do you believe she's... Oh, it's not what she's doing, you say. Ah, so she says you're overspending, whereas she's spending money, but she's using it to what? Okay, so she's using it to go out to eat a whole lot when you tell her that a lot of times I'm sure that there's food at home, right? Okay, so she does cook. But she just overspends when it comes to going out to eat sometimes. Okay, I get it. And there's nothing wrong with that. It happens. Even me and my woman sometimes we'll have food at home, but then occasionally we'll eat out sometimes more than we should. But that's understandable. But anyway, that's the finance area. That area can be an easy fix. You just have to be aware of how much money you're going to spend every time you go out to eat and versus how much money you're going to put into groceries and to bring home. Because trust me, buying groceries nowadays is not easy. Even some people who have food stamps, they'll tell you it's not easy. But that's another subject for another time. Let's go back to the matter at hand. The whole point I see in this marriage here is you both are doing double standards to each other too much. And it has to come to an end. And it seems like your double standards fall under the financial department unless there's more. Oh, there's more? Okay, well, what's the other area it falls under? Oh, so you want him to start working out more. Okay, well, what about you? Mrs. Parker, see right there, what you just did is a double standard. You say you don't need to work out. Okay, well, how much, Mr. Parker, how much do you weigh? You weigh barely 220. Okay, fair size. That's about an average size. What about you, Mrs. Parker? How much do you weigh? Oh, yes, I am that very blunt. I have no problem with asking another woman about how much she weighs. Oh, you say it doesn't matter? Okay. Well, based on what I'm seeing right now, it looks like you're at no more than maybe... We'll just say maybe 230, maybe a little less. Mrs. Parker, relax. I didn't say you weigh 300 pounds. I didn't say you weigh 400 pounds. But listen to what you just said. You are telling your husband here he needs to lose weight. But now when he urges you to do the same thing, all of a sudden it's, I don't need to lose weight. I'm fine. That right there automatically is a double standard. So one thing I can tell both of you right now is this. When it comes to the arguments, the money, the weight problem, the grocery problem, there's double standards in there that you both need to come to an understanding on. And especially when it comes to the argument, one of you does not need to be overbearing. Oh, so you see, I didn't say it was you, Mrs. Parker. I didn't say it was even you, Mr. Parker. When it comes in general to the arguments, one of you or both of you need to not be overbearing. You need to listen to what one of them says, and then let the other person understand where you're coming from. Because if all you're going to do is just keep yelling and yelling and yelling and yelling, then of course the silent treatment's going to come up, because it's like, why even bother doing it? And based on what I'm hearing from you and seeing in the notes, it sounds like, Mrs. Parker, you are the one who's been giving the silent treatment to your husband the most. And then when he does what you say and tries to get a conversation out of you, now here he is doing the silent treatment, and you get mad about it when he does it. You can't keep doing that. That's not a good, healthy relationship down the road, because that just means anytime you get into a hissy fit, you're going to just yell at him for a little bit, then you're going to get quiet, then he may do something you want, or something that he knows will benefit both of y'all. Then later on, when you try to yell at him again, he's just going to sit there and do the same thing you did. So the silent treatment, you both need to work on not doing that to each other. It's not healthy for your marriage. I mean, is this how you want your kids to start handling their relationships later on when y'all get older? As soon as they start yelling at their partner, then they give them the silent treatment and basically won't reciprocate their feelings or understand their feelings and where they're coming from? Is this how you want your kids to be? Exactly. You don't want your kids to be like that. So let your kids, they may see you argue, or may even hear you argue, but turn around and show them that after we done had our argument, look what we're doing. We're still making up. We're still making things work. We're still coming together as a couple and showing each other love and affection. I guarantee you, after every argument, if you do that, your love will get stronger and it'll last longer. Even if you have differences, the silent treatment only works if the relationship is really bad. And you both right now need to work on not giving each other the silent treatment. When you get into an argument, matter of fact, here's my personal example of it. When I was a kid, I used to see my parents argue every once in a while. But you know what they did after the argument is all said and done? They came together. They showed me that by loving each other and by being there for each other, by the grace of God, that things will always get better. So your problem is not serious. You just need to stop with the silent treatment, stop with the double standards, and turn to each other and say, okay, I heard what you said, baby. I will work on it. But I need you to do the same thing in return if you want me to do this for you. And if that's a problem for you, then I understand. You both have to come together and find a way to work through those problems. Well, I'm glad you both understand this now. But unfortunately, my time is nearly almost up. Is there anything else you want to say to each other? Now, that's the best answer you can say to your wife right now. And I need you to say it back to him. Yes. Tell your husband that, baby, I love you and I want this to work. And he just told you I love you, so you need to say it back. But anyway, my session is up. I want you to both go out that door and smile together and be together from here on out. Have a nice day.